The dusty air hung heavy over forward operating base Falcon, the sun casting long shadows across the worn tents and sandbags. Specialist Elena Ramirez stood quietly near the makeshift medical tent, her hands steady as she checked her supplies. To the others, she was just another medic, focused, efficient, and mostly invisible. But today, something was different. The unexpected sound of boots pounding against the gravel cut through the morning calm. Soldiers snapped to attention as Colonel Marcus Kane, a stern man with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, strode onto the base. He carried himself like a man who had seen too much and trusted too little. The tension thickened as Kane's gaze swept over the assembled troops, landing briefly on Elena. Without warning, his voice cut through the hum of the base. "Specialist Ramirez, step forward!" Whispers flickered among the soldiers. Elena's heart skipped, but she kept her composure. She walked toward the colonel, her uniform crisp despite the heat, her expression unreadable. "Remove your uniform sleeves," Kane ordered, his tone cold but steady. Elena's eyes flicked to the men and women standing around her. None had been singled out like this. Confused glances were exchanged. She hesitated for a heartbeat, but obedience outweighed doubt. Slowly, she rolled up her left sleeve, revealing pale skin marked by a single, striking tattoo. It wasn't the kind of tattoo most soldiers had. This was something different. A complex design etched in black ink, sharp lines forming a symbol that looked more like an insignia than mere art. The entire base seemed to hold its breath. Colonel Kane's gaze locked onto the tattoo, and the change was immediate. His confident stance faltered, his eyes wide as if the past had just caught up with him in an instant. "What is this?" Kane asked, his voice barely above a whisper, though it carried enough weight to hush the murmurs of the crowd. Elena looked down at her forearm, her fingers brushing the ink almost instinctively. "It's the emblem of the Raven unit, sir," she said quietly. The name seemed to echo through the silent base. Few had ever heard of the Raven unit. It was classified, a ghost from the Cold War, a legend whispered among old veterans but never confirmed. Kane's face tightened. Memories flickered behind his eyes, shadows of a time when secrets ruled the world and lives were traded for silence. "How did you come to have this?" he asked, his voice now firm but layered with something unspoken. Elena met his gaze without flinching. "My mother was part of that unit," she said. "She told me to carry the mark and to never reveal it unless the time came." A heavy silence fell. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably, trying to process the weight of what they'd just learned. Elena's mother, a name long buried, was tied to a covert operation that had shaped global conflicts. Without anyone outside the highest ranks ever knowing, Kane's eyes flicked back to the tattoo as if searching for answers in the ink itself. "You understand what this means, Ramirez?" he asked, voice low. Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. It means I carry a legacy, one I was trained to protect." The colonel's expression softened, though the tension didn't leave his posture. "We're at war, Ramirez. Not just here, but with shadows from the past coming back to haunt us. This tattoo, it changes everything." Elena swallowed hard. For years, she had hidden her family's secret beneath layers of uniform and silence, blending in with the ranks to avoid attention. Now, the secret was out, and with it came a new burden. The soldiers around them exchanged looks, some filled with curiosity, others with a dawning respect. Elena was no longer just the quiet medic. She was a link to something greater, something dangerous. Kane stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your mother's work, that unit's missions, they didn't end when the Cold War did. We've been fighting their fight in the shadows. And now it seems the past is bleeding into the present?" Elena's heart pounded, but her face remained calm. "Then I'm ready, Colonel. Whatever comes next." A brief nod passed between them, a silent understanding forged in the heat of the moment. As Kane turned to continue his inspection, the soldiers around Elena began to see her differently, not just a medic, but a soldier carrying the weight of history on her skin. And for the first time in a long time, Elena felt the full weight of her legacy and the fight that lay ahead. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning chill, but the unease lingered. Beneath the surface of the dusty base, old secrets stirred. And Specialist Elena Ramirez was about to step into a story that would test her courage, her loyalty, and everything she thought she knew about sacrifice. The tattoo was no longer just a mark on her skin. It was a warning and a call to arms. The moment Colonel Kane's eyes landed on the tattoo, the entire atmosphere shifted. The confident command in his gaze froze, replaced by a flicker of disbelief and something deeper, recognition. Elena could see it clearly now. The man before her wasn't just a commander. He was a man haunted by ghosts from a past that refused to stay buried. The tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a key to a secret world few knew existed. The emblem of the Raven Unit was infamous among those who had served decades ago, a covert squad that operated in the shadows during the Cold War. Their missions were classified, their existence denied. Yet here it was, stark and undeniable on Elena's forearm. Kane stepped back, his mind racing. The base around them seemed to fade, replaced by memories of briefings in dimly lit rooms, coded messages, and silent promises sworn between soldiers who knew their lives were expendable. The tattoo was a reminder of all that, of bravery and betrayal, sacrifice and silence. Elena watched him carefully. She had prepared for this moment, yet the weight of his reaction was heavier than she expected. "Colonel," she said quietly, "my mother was part of the Raven Unit. She made me promise to carry this emblem and to never reveal it unless it was necessary. I didn't choose this path. It was my legacy." Kane's voice was low, thick with emotion he tried to hide. "The Raven Unit, I thought that chapter was closed long ago. They said it was disbanded, erased from records." He looked around the base, suddenly aware that every soldier was listening. "But the past doesn't disappear so easily." Elena nodded. "That's true. The enemies we fight now are different, but some threats remain the same. The shadows stretch longer than we think." There was a long silence, heavy with unspoken truths. Soldiers shifted in their boots, sensing that something monumental was unfolding, something that transcended their daily routine of patrols and medevac calls. Kane took a deep breath, his face hardening into the form the men and women of the base knew well. "Tell me everything," he said. "What do you know about the Raven Unit?" "About your mother?" Elena's eyes flickered with memories she rarely shared. The Raven Unit was more than a special forces team. They were intelligence operatives, medics, spies, all working under the radar. My mother was one of the best, quiet, deadly, and fiercely loyal. She never talked about the missions, but I grew up hearing whispers, seeing the fear and pride in her eyes. She traced the tattoo slowly with her finger, the design sharp and deliberate. When she passed the legacy to me, she warned that the world would need us again. She believed the past would come calling. Kane nodded slowly. And it has. His gaze hardened as he looked back toward the horizon, where the rugged Afghan mountains cut into the sky. "We've been tracking increased Taliban activity, more coordinated, more dangerous. Intelligence suggests a new threat emerging from old networks, possibly tied to remnants of Cold War operatives still active in the region." Elena's heart quickened. "So the Raven Unit's past isn't just history. It's a warning." "Exactly." Kane's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your tattoo isn't just a symbol. It's a map, a code, and a call. You're connected to something much bigger than this base." The soldiers around them exchanged uneasy glances. The air was thick with the realization that Elena's quiet presence was now central to a looming storm. Kane stepped closer again, eyes sharp. "You're not just a medic anymore. You're a key asset. We need to know if you have any intelligence, any contacts from your mother's network, anything that can help us stop what's coming." Elena swallowed hard. The weight of responsibility pressed down, but beneath it was a fierce determination. "I'll do whatever it takes, sir." Kane nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Good, because what's coming won't wait for us to be ready." The rest of the morning blurred into a whirlwind of briefings and planning. Elena found herself in a room surrounded by maps, radios crackling with static, and faces etched with exhaustion and resolve. Every detail mattered: the coordinates of known insurgent camps, the latest intercepted communications. the shifting alliances that made this conflict unpredictable. Her mind raced back to her mother's lessons. The drills, the secret codes hidden in plain sight. For years, Elena had trained as a medic, saving lives on the front line, but now she was being called to tap into a deeper, darker knowledge. Later, in the quiet moments between briefings, she pulled out an old leather-bound notebook her mother had left her. The pages were yellowed and filled with cryptic symbols and shorthand notes. She ran her fingers over the faded ink, trying to decipher the clues that might lead to the network still active today. As she studied, Kane approached quietly. "That unit operated in shadows for a reason," he said softly. "They trusted few and relied on secrecy. If you're going to bring their legacy back to life, you'll have to be just as careful." Elena looked up, determination burning in her eyes. "I'm ready." Kane nodded once more, then looked out toward the base entrance, where the sun was beginning to dip behind the mountains. "Prepare yourself. We're moving out at dawn. This mission will test everything you are." Outside, the Afghan wind kicked up dust and carried the distant sounds of war. The past was no longer a distant memory. It was here, tangled with the present, and Elena Ramirez was right at its heart. Elena sat alone in the dim light of the medical tent, the worn notebook resting on her lap like a fragile relic from another life. The faces of the soldiers outside blurred past, each carrying their own burdens, but her mind was miles away, back to a childhood she barely allowed herself to remember. The legacy of the Raven unit was no ordinary inheritance. It was a shadow that shaped every step she had taken. Her mother's voice echoed softly in her memory, calm but resolute. "Never reveal who you are until the moment demands it. Our strength lies in silence and patience." Elena had followed that advice like a lifeline, hiding her tattoo beneath sleeves, hiding her history beneath the surface. She had joined the military to serve as a medic, to save lives, to be just another soldier. But now, the lines between who she was and who she was meant to be were blurring fast. Outside the tent, the base bustled with activity. Soldiers prepared for the mission ahead, their faces tight with focus and fatigue. Elena's thoughts drifted to the photographs she had seen of her mother. Black and white images of a younger woman in uniform, her eyes fierce, her posture proud. Those images carried stories of covert missions in icy landscapes and shadowy cities, far removed from the sun-scorched Afghan desert. Elena reached for the notebook again, tracing the cryptic symbols her mother had carefully recorded. The writing was a blend of codes and shorthand, the language of spies and soldiers trained to fight wars hidden from public view. The Raven unit wasn't just about combat. It was about intelligence, about weaving through webs of deception and danger. Her fingers lingered on a page marked with coordinates and symbols she barely understood. A map of forgotten battlefields and secret rendezvous points. The more she studied, the more the lines between past and present blurred. The Cold War was over, but its ghosts lingered. Threats buried deep in history now resurfacing with deadly intent. The tent flap stirred and Kane stepped inside, his gaze steady. "You're thinking about your mother," he said quietly. "She carried a heavy burden." Elena nodded. "She did. I want to honor that, but I'm scared. What if I'm not ready for what comes next?" Kane's expression softened, revealing the man beneath the uniform. "None of us are ever truly ready. But courage isn't about being fearless. It's about moving forward even when you're afraid." That honesty settled something inside her. She wasn't alone in this. The mission wasn't just hers, it was theirs. Together, they were going to face whatever shadow lingered from the past. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and tension. Elena trained harder than ever, combining her medic skills with the covert tactics her mother had taught her through stories and secret lessons. She learned to read subtle signals, to move silently, and to trust instincts sharpened by years of quiet vigilance. Kane watched her closely, recognizing a strength in Elena that went beyond physical skill. There was a resilience, a resolve forged in fire. "You remind me of her," he admitted one evening. "Not just the soldier, but the spirit behind the badge." Elena allowed herself a small, tired smile. "I hope I can live up to that." The mission briefing came with a weight that settled deep in her bones. Intelligence pointed to a hidden network. Old Cold War contacts resurfacing to arm insurgents with weapons and tactics designed to destabilize the region. The very enemies her mother had fought against, now revived and ready to strike. Elena's role was clear. She wasn't just a medic. She was a bridge between worlds, a guardian of secrets and a fighter in a new kind of war. The tattoo on her arm was no longer just a mark of the past. It was a beacon guiding her forward. When the day of deployment arrived, Elena stood among her team, her uniform immaculate, her resolve unshakable. The hum of helicopters filled the air as they prepared to move out, the desert wind whipping against their faces like a challenge. Kane approached, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "Remember, we fight not just for the mission, but for every life behind us. Trust your training. Trust yourself." Elena met his gaze, the weight of history and hope mingling in her eyes. "I will." As they boarded the chopper, the world below seemed distant, a vast canvas of dust and shadows. Elena's thoughts returned to her mother's words, to the promise she carried deep in her heart. The fight was no longer just theirs, it was a legacy demanding to be fulfilled. The rotor blades roared, lifting them into the sky, carrying them toward danger, toward truth, toward a battle that would test every part of who Elena was and who she was becoming. Cold wind bit at Elena's face as the helicopter descended toward a remote outpost nestled deep within the rugged Afghan mountains. The air was thin, sharp, carrying the scent of dust and pine. Elena gripped the sides of her seat, the tattoo on her forearm suddenly feeling heavier, as if it was alive, pulsing with the history it carried. This mission wasn't just about the present fight. It was about a legacy that had stretched through decades of war, betrayal, and sacrifice. As the chopper touched down, Colonel Kane turned to her, his voice steady but low. "This outpost used to be a Soviet listening post during the Cold War, abandoned for years, until recently. Intel suggests it's been reactivated. Our job is to find out who's behind it." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of those words. The Cold War had ended decades ago, but its ghosts were far from gone. She thought of her mother, a young operative moving silently through shadowed cities, gathering secrets that could change the course of nations. Now Elena was stepping into the very ground her mother once knew, walking paths marked by danger and silence. The team moved quickly, boots crunching on gravel as they approached the crumbling structure. The outpost loomed like a monument to forgotten wars, walls scarred by time, antennas twisted and broken. Elena's eyes scanned the surroundings, every detail etched into her memory like a map. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and the scent of rust. Broken machinery and faded posters hinted at decades of secrecy. But Elena's focus was on a small metal locker, half buried beneath debris. She crouched, brushing away dirt to reveal faded letters etched into the surface. "Raven Unit." Her breath caught. This was more than a relic. It was a sign that the past was alive here, tangled with the present in ways she had only feared. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached out, tracing the worn emblem carved into the metal. Kane's voice came from behind her. "You knew this place existed." Elena turned slowly. "My mother told me about it years ago. She said the Raven Unit's operations extended beyond what history shows. This was a hub, a gathering point during the Cold War. And now, it looks like someone is trying to bring it back." The colonel's eyes narrowed. "Then we need to find out who." As the team began to search the outpost, Elena uncovered a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside were stacks of documents, old files, maps, and faded photographs. The papers were brittle, but detailed plans and coded messages were clear enough to tell a story of ongoing covert operations. Her heart pounded as she realized the full scope. Remnants of the Cold War's secret battles were still active, resurfacing to arm insurgents and destabilize the region. The same networks her mother had fought against were now pulling strings in the shadows. Elena's mind raced. Her mother had warned her this day would come, that the world's quiet wars never truly ended. And now it was her turn to step into the breach. Suddenly, the crackle of radios broke the silence. Kane's voice cut through, sharp and urgent. Movement detected. Possible enemy approaching. The team snapped to alert, weapons raised, eyes scanning the rocky terrain outside. Elena's pulse quickened, not just from the danger, but from the stark realization that the Cold War's ghosts were walking alongside them, weapons in hand. The outpost became a battlefield of silence and tension. Elena moved swiftly, her training as a medic merging with her newfound role as a covert operative. She patched wounds under fire, relayed critical information, and navigated the chaos with a calm born from years of hidden strength. Through the gunfire and shadows, Kane fought beside her, his respect for Elena growing with every moment. She was more than a soldier. She was a symbol of endurance, a bridge between eras. When the dust settled, the team secured the outpost, but the fight was far from over. The documents they recovered revealed a network deeper and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Back at the base, Elena sat in the quiet, her mind replaying the day's events. The tattoo on her arm wasn't just a mark of honor. It was a reminder of a fight that spanned generations. Her mother's legacy wasn't just history. It was a living, breathing force driving her forward. Kane approached, handing her a file from the recovered documents. "You need to see this." Inside were names, locations, plans, evidence of a shadow war stretching across continents. The Cold War's secrets were no longer buried. They were weapons in the hands of new enemies. Elena's gaze hardened. "Then we finish what was started. We stop this network before it can destroy everything." Kane nodded. "And you'll lead the way." The weight of command settled on her shoulders, heavy but not crushing. Elena Ramirez was no longer just a simple medic. She was the inheritor of a legacy forged in silence, sacrifice, and unwavering courage. The past was alive. The future depended on what she would do next. Night settled over the base like a heavy curtain, muffling the distant sounds of war into a low, constant hum. Elena sat alone in the dim glow of a single lamp. The recovered documents spread before her like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit. Names, coordinates, cryptic notes, each line telling a story of a hidden war stretching far beyond the mountains outside. Her fingers traced the edges of a photograph, faded but unmistakable. A group of soldiers from the Raven unit, young and fierce, standing against a backdrop of cold steel and snow. Her mother was there, eyes sharp, posture commanding. Elena felt the weight of their legacy pressing down on her. This wasn't just history. It was a map of danger, betrayal, and unfinished business. The quiet was broken by a soft knock at the tent flap. Colonel Kane stepped inside, his face drawn but determined. "I've been going over the intel," he said, settling beside her. "This network isn't just supplying weapons. They're moving men, information, and influence. It's a full-scale operation," Elena nodded. "And it's linked to those Cold War operatives, ghosts who never really disappeared." Her voice was steady, but inside, a storm was building. The past was bleeding into the present, and she was standing at the crossroads. "We need to strike," Kane said, eyes locked on hers, quickly, decisively. The plan was brutal in its simplicity, a covert raid on a key supply point deep in enemy territory, where weapons and intelligence flowed into the insurgents' hands. Elena's role was critical, not just as a medic, but as a symbol of the Raven legacy. She was to lead a small team, blending medical expertise with covert skills, to gather intelligence and disable the operation. The night before the mission, Elena stood under a sky thick with stars, the desert wind cool against her skin. She thought of her mother, the sacrifices made in silence, the battles fought in shadows. This was her moment, the moment she had been prepared for all her life. The next morning, the team moved out under cover of dawn, the landscape around them vast and unforgiving. Every step was measured, every breath deliberate. The enemy was close, and the line between survival and death razor thin. Elena's heart pounded as they approached the compound, a fortified cluster of buildings guarded by well-armed insurgents. The air was tense with anticipation and danger. Using hand signals, Kane directed the team to split. Elena's group moved toward the medical supply tent, a strategic point filled with both weapons disguised as medical gear and crucial documents. Her fingers trembled as she worked quickly, gathering intelligence and disabling communication devices. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air. Gunfire erupted from the shadows. The team dove for cover as chaos exploded around them. Elena's training kicked in, her hands steady despite the adrenaline, her voice calm as she directed medics to the wounded. Amid the firefight, Elena caught sight of a figure moving with unnatural precision, a sniper picking off soldiers from a distant ridge. She felt a chill. This was no ordinary enemy. This was someone trained, skilled, and deadly. Kane radioed urgently. "Sniper on the ridge. We need a counter!" Elena scanned the landscape, heart racing. Memories of her mother's lessons flooded back. The importance of patience, observation, and precision under pressure. Taking a deep breath, Elena retrieved her rifle, moving with calculated silence. The tattoo on her forearm burned beneath the sleeve as if fueling her resolve. She found cover behind a rock, eyes fixed on the distant figure. Her breath slowed, heart steadying as she prepared to return fire. The sniper's gaze was sharp, calculating. For a moment, two soldiers, one from the past, one from the present, locked in a deadly game across the mountains. Elena squeezed the trigger, the shot echoing through the valley. The sniper faltered, then disappeared behind the ridge. Kane's voice crackled through the radio. "Good hit, Ramirez. Focus on the mission." With the sniper neutralized, the team pressed forward, securing the compound. Elena moved quickly among the wounded, her hands steady as she saved lives in the midst of chaos. As the dust settled, they discovered a hidden cache, documents revealing the full scope of the network, ties to powerful figures, plans for future attacks, and evidence of betrayal within their own ranks. Elena felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. The war wasn't just against external enemies. It was tangled with betrayal and deception deep inside their own command. Back at base, the atmosphere was heavy with both victory and uncertainty. Elena handed over the documents to Kane, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. This mission was just the beginning. That night, as Elena lay beneath the Afghan stars, the weight of her mother's legacy pressed down. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for truth, for honor, for a future shaped by courage and sacrifice. The Raven unit's shadow stretched long, but Elena was ready to carry the light forward, no matter the cost. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she carefully unfolded the latest intelligence report. The weight of the information pressed down on her like a heavy shroud. Names of operatives, locations of safe houses, coded transmissions intercepted deep within enemy territory. Every line painted a clearer picture of a web of deception that stretched far beyond the Afghan mountains. This was no longer just a battlefield of guns and bombs. It was a war of secrets, lies, and hidden alliances. Colonel Kane stood beside her, his face grim. "The network is bigger than we thought. They've infiltrated higher ranks than anyone suspected. We need to act fast before they move again." Elena nodded, swallowing the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. The betrayal stung, knowing that those they trusted might be working against them. But there was no room for doubt or hesitation. The mission had shifted from defense to a desperate hunt for truth and justice. That night, the team gathered around a flickering map projected on the tent's wall. Kane outlined the plan, a surgical strike on a key safe house rumored to be the nerve center of the insurgents' operations. Elena's role was pivotal. She would lead the reconnaissance team, moving silently through hostile terrain to gather real-time intelligence. As the briefing ended, Elena caught Kane's eye. "What if this leads us to more betrayals? More shadows we can't see?" Kane's gaze was steady. "Then we face them head-on. That's what soldiers do." The cold night air bit at Elena's face as they moved out under the cover of darkness. The mountains loomed around them like silent sentinels, shadows twisting and shifting with every step. Every sound was amplified, the crunch of gravel beneath boots, the whisper of wind through dry brush. Elena's senses sharpened, every instinct on high alert. Her team moved with practiced precision, each member a vital thread woven into the mission's fragile tapestry. They reached the outskirts of the safe house, a dilapidated compound hidden among jagged rocks and thorny bushes. The building was quiet, but Elena knew danger lurked in every shadow. Crouching low, she signaled the team to split. Her pulse quickened as they crept closer, eyes scanning for traps or sentries. Elena's fingers brushed against the tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve, a silent reminder of the legacy she carried and the strength she drew from it. Suddenly, a faint noise, a whispered conversation, drifted from a cracked window. Elena raised her hand to halt the team, listening intently. The voices spoke in hushed tones, discussing plans, codes, and names that confirmed the network's reach. Her heart pounded as she pulled out a small recording device, capturing every word. This was the evidence they needed. But retreat was risky, the enemy was close, and the element of surprise was slipping away. A sudden flash of movement caught Elena's eye. A guard patrolling the perimeter. Without hesitation, she signaled to her team, and they moved swiftly to intercept. The guard barely had time to react before Elena's hand was over his mouth, silencing him. The mission was on a knife's edge. Any mistake could mean disaster. Elena's breath was shallow as they retreated, the recorded intel clutched tightly in her hand. Back at base, the mood was tense but hopeful. The recordings confirmed what they feared and revealed deeper layers of betrayal. Some of the names belonged to high-ranking officers once thought loyal. The web of deceit was tangled and dangerous. Elena sat with Kane poring over the data. How do we fight enemies we can't see? Who wear our own uniforms? Kane's jaw tightened. We start by rooting out the traitors. By standing strong even when the ground shakes beneath us. The days that followed were a whirlwind of interrogations, surveillance, and shifting alliances. Elena found herself caught between worlds, trusted medic, covert operative, and reluctant detective unraveling a mystery that threatened to tear the military apart from within. Her nights were restless, haunted by memories of her mother's warnings. Trust no one, Elena. The shadows are everywhere. But she refused to be broken. With every revelation, her resolve hardened. The fight was no longer just for survival. It was for the soul of the military she loved, for the soldiers who depended on her, and for the legacy her mother had entrusted to her. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Elena stood on the base's perimeter, the wind tugging at her uniform. The tattoo on her arm caught the fading light, a symbol of strength, sacrifice, and unyielding courage. She whispered a promise into the cold air. I will not let the shadows win. And with that, Elena Ramirez prepared to face the darkness head-on, armed not just with weapons and training, but with a legacy of honor that no betrayal could break. Elena stood at the edge of the makeshift operations center, the hum of radios and whispered orders filling the air like a distant storm. The tension was thick. Every soldier here knew the stakes had just skyrocketed. The betrayal they uncovered wasn't just about a hidden network. It was about a traitor in their midst, someone who had been playing both sides for years, someone who had nearly cost them everything. Her eyes flicked to Colonel Kane, who was briefing the team on the next phase of the mission. We move fast and clean, he said. We expose the traitor and dismantle this network once and for all. Elena's mind raced as she checked her gear. She was no longer just a medic. She was a hunter. The shadows her mother warned her about were closing in, but she wasn't afraid. The tattoo on her arm seemed to glow in the dim light, a beacon guiding her through the darkness. The plan was surgical. Elena's team would infiltrate the command center of the network, a fortified compound nestled in a valley notorious for ambushes. Intelligence suggested this was the hub where the traitor coordinated with insurgents and foreign agents. The journey there was brutal. The desert heat beat down mercilessly as the convoy moved slowly through winding mountain passes. Every bend in the road was a potential trap. Elena sat tense in the back of the armored vehicle, her gaze fixed on the rocky horizon, every sense alert. When they arrived, The compound was worse than expected. High walls topped with barbed wire, armed guards patrolling in tight formations, and surveillance cameras scanning relentlessly. It was a fortress built on fear and secrets. Elena's team disembarked quietly, melting into the shadows as night fell. The plan called for stealth, but as they moved closer, a sudden flare lit the sky. An alarm triggered. The enemy was waiting. Gunfire erupted, sharp and brutal, echoing off the canyon walls. Elena ducked behind a crumbling wall, adrenaline surging. Her medical training took over, quick assessment of wounds, calm triage under fire. But this battle was different. This was personal. Amid the chaos, Elena caught a glimpse of a figure slipping through the smoke. A man in a uniform that should have meant trust, but whose eyes held cold calculation. The traitor. Without hesitation, Elena gave chase. The labyrinthine compound twisted and turned, shadows swallowing sound and light. Her heart pounded, breath coming in sharp bursts, but she didn't falter. The man led her to a hidden room filled with documents, encrypted devices, and communication gear. He paused, turning slowly with a cruel smile. "You don't know what you're fighting for, Elena. You're a pawn in a game far bigger than you realize." She didn't respond. Instead, she raised her weapon, steady and sure. "I fight for honor. For the soldiers who trusted you. For the legacy you tried to destroy." The traitor sneered but made a desperate move to escape. Elena lunged, tackling him to the ground. The fight was fierce but brief, years of training and resolve overpowering desperation. With the traitor subdued, Elena secured the devices and called for extraction. The team moved swiftly to contain the compound, dismantling the network piece by piece. Back at base, the weight of victory was tempered by the harsh truth of betrayal. Elena watched as the traitor was led away in cuffs, a man once respected now exposed as a villain. Colonel Kane approached, his voice low. "You did more than your duty, Ramirez. You brought light into the darkest corner." Elena allowed herself a rare smile. "I just did what had to be done." But beneath the surface, she felt the deep ache of loss. The knowledge that the war wasn't just against an external enemy, but against shadows that lurked within. That night, Elena stood alone beneath the stars, the tattoo on her arm a silent testament to her mother's legacy. She whispered a vow to the cold sky, to carry the fight forward, to protect the truth, and to honor the sacrifices that had come before, because the battlefield wasn't just the desert or the mountains. It was the soul of every soldier, every secret, and every choice made in the dark, and Elena Ramirez was ready to face it all. The sun rose slowly over the base, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Elena stood at attention, her uniform crisp, her face calm but etched with exhaustion. Today was the day of the medal ceremony, a moment she never expected to reach, not just for herself, but for the legacy she carried on her skin. The tattoo, once hidden beneath sleeves, was now a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the invisible battles fought in silence. As the commanding officers gathered, Elena's thoughts drifted back to everything that had led her here. The missions, the betrayals, the moments when death felt closer than breath. The battlefield had tested her body and soul, but it had also revealed a truth she carried deep inside. Strength came not only from firepower, but from the unyielding will to stand for something greater than oneself. Colonel Kane stepped forward, his voice steady and respectful. "Today, we honor a soldier who embodied the very spirit of resilience. Elena Ramirez faced shadows no one dared confront, uncovered secrets that threatened to unravel us, and led her team with unwavering courage. Her actions saved countless lives and preserved the honor of this unit." Elena's name echoed through the air as the medal was placed gently around her neck. The applause was thunderous, but inside she felt a quiet hum, a mixture of pride, grief, and resolve. After the ceremony, she found herself alone near the flagpole, the wind tugging at the folds of the flag above. The tattoo on her forearm caught the light, a phoenix rising from ashes, symbolizing rebirth and endurance. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "No matter the cost, carry our story forward. Suddenly, a shadow fell beside her. Kane's presence was steady, his eyes reflecting unspoken respect. "Your mother would be proud, and so are we." Elena nodded, feeling the full weight of generations behind her. The war wasn't over. New threats lurked in the darkness, but she was ready. That evening, Elena walked through the barracks, passing young soldiers preparing for deployment. She saw in their eyes the same mix of fear and hope she once felt. She paused, touching her tattoo lightly, a silent promise to guide and protect those who would follow. Her phone buzzed, a message from an old contact. "New intel. Possible resurgence in the north. Need you?" A faint smile curved her lips. The fight was far from finished. She turned toward the horizon, the sun dipping below jagged peaks, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. Elena Ramirez, the simple woman once told to take off her uniform, now stood as a living testament to courage, legacy, and the unbreakable bond between past and present. Her story was far from over, and as the night embraced the world, she prepared for the battles yet to come, with fire in her heart and the tattoo on her arm as her guiding light.